Hi y'all, it's Cathy. How you doing this morning? I posted this on my neighborhood watch, so I hope that some of my friends from my town get to come in. I hope also my volume is up. Let's see. There we go. I don't know. I'm adjusting things, y'all. Hope you can hear me. Please tell me if you can't. Anyway, I'm glad to see you. I hope everyone's doing good. Today I have something to tell y'all about what happened yesterday. I have to put my glasses on so I can see. Can someone comment to me so I can tell if you're even picking me up or anything? It's not showing any comments or anything right now. So let me just let it run for a few minutes and see if it picks up. My friend was having trouble with her live video yesterday and it kept getting blurry and going out. So I hope I'm not having the same problem this morning. I guess our internet out here messes up a little sometimes. Anyway, I'm Cathy, if you don't know me, and my little podcast, the live podcast, which is totally unscripted. I just do whatever I think about. You know, I pray about it and then I tell whatever story I feel like I'm supposed to tell. And so it's live and candid and all that. Anyway, my name is Cathy, and my podcast is called Encounters with Spirits. It's basically stories about experiences that I have had with supernatural beings, either angels or a person's spirit or any kind of a spirit. So that's what it's going to be about. And this is about the seventh one, I think, that I've told so far. And now I'm starting to see a few little messages, so I think it's showing. I haven't had any comments yet, so I hope that it is picking up. It's made me kind of confused by seeing that. Anyway, I wanted to tell y'all a little something about what happened last night. It's kind of hard for me to say this since I know some of y'all don't know me and it might make you feel uncomfortable. But basically, let me say that the gift that I have, is the one that it talks about in the Bible about being a seer or a visionary. In other words, sometimes I see things that other people can't see, or I hear things that other people can't hear, or I pick up messages from God about certain people or things, or I just plain see a ghost. So, you know, there's all kinds of spirits walking around on the earth, and we just have to keep, it keeps telling me my volume is off. I just don't know if y'all can hear me or not. And I don't know why it's telling me my volume is off. Let me see. Now is that better? I don't know, y'all. I don't know what's going on with this crazy video this morning. Anyway, so it threw me off though, and now I'm stuttering and everything else. Anyway, the same gift that people say they have as a psychic or a medium, you know, God's the only one that creates. Satan doesn't create. So God created us, and if he gave us a gift or an ability, then whatever that gift or ability is, whether it's singing or whatever, you know, you're supposed to use it, you know, for God. And I'm sorry, I'm not trying to preach, because I know some of y'all are total atheists and you don't believe any of this stuff, and that's fine. But I'm just saying, from my perspective, I have those abilities, and I try to do what I feel is right with those abilities. But anyway, so the reason I told y'all that is because last night I had a lady that was watching my program contact me. And sorry, I don't have my lipstick on and I gotta put on. I get distracted easily. I must have that AD whatever stuff. Anyway, she contacted me and asked me if I would do, quote, a reading for her. Now, to me, in the past, all that I ever did was someone say, I have, you know, I'm sad, I'm in grief, whatever, and I would just pray for them, and I might get what I call a word for them. So to me, it's all the same thing, because you're getting told this information from someone in heaven, and people try to say, oh no, that's the devil, everything's the devil. Well, the devil gets too much credit. because God uses messengers to tell us things, to instruct us, to look. He did with Moses and Elijah. They came and instructed Jesus when he did not want to go to the cross. He was said, if it's thy will. He did God's will instead of his own will, because it was a horrible thing to have to do. So Moses and Elijah kind of helped him and counseled him on that. They were people who had lived, who had passed away, and so that's what they call dead people, right? But in fact, nobody ever dies. We just go from living this life into living the next part of our eternal life. And you're going to live your eternal life somewhere, either walking in lost on the earth until the final days, or walking in the light, so which is God's glory. So that's my take on it, and y'all can have your own take. I'm just the one here to tell the stories, and I'm just telling you why I think this way and what happened last night. And that is, a lady called me and wanted me to give her a reading, because people who watch this understand that I have that gift, that ability to be able to hear from heaven. And I was gonna talk to her and everything, and I told her, that I couldn't do it right now because I was busy, and I might do it in a couple days. Well, I was in the kitchen cooking dinner and everything, and the Lord just spoke to me and said, I don't want you to do that. I don't want you to give that lady a reading. And I was like, okay. And he said, because I want you to focus on your podcast right now. And I said, that's interesting, because I didn't know that it was, I felt called to do this, but I didn't know it was, something that the Lord really wanted me to do. So he said, I just want you to focus on that, because if you start doing that, readings, then you're going to get caught up in doing that, and I want you to be telling about the miracles, because even if they don't believe you, they'll believe the miracles. And so isn't that exactly what Jesus did? And I thought that was so interesting. Now, and in fact, I forgot to tell y'all the words that were actually spoken to me. He said, let me read, because I wrote it down so I wouldn't forget. He said, not to give the reading, and he wanted me to focus on the podcast, and he said that Jesus could have done that. Jesus could have sat and brought people's loved ones to them all day, because everybody that grieves a loved one wants to hear them again, wants to talk to them again. That's a natural response from the love that we have. And it's not wrong or bad, y'all. It's just that we're not supposed to spend our time dwelling on that, because they're in their place of life right now, and we're still living in our place of life here right now. But anyway, he said that Jesus could have done that all day, but he was busy teaching. So that really was a revelation to me. Something that he was teaching people something that many of the people already knew. They already knew the law. They already knew, especially the temple people, people that went to church, and all the preachers and everybody, the priests, they already knew the things that Jesus was teaching, but he gave them a different interpretation and meaning behind the words that they were reading or being taught. So again, the things that happened to me are things that people have been taught about. They've been taught about these things, but they've been taught it in a different light. They've been taught that some things are wrong, and when in fact they don't realize that in the next part of the Bible, somebody's actually that said those things were wrong is actually doing the thing that they said was wrong, which makes it seem contradictory. But in fact, it's just that when you were under the rule and law and all of that they were teaching in the Old Testament, you were taught certain things a certain way. And then when Jesus came, he started showing us through examples and then teaching us things in a different way. So I am mainly going to use and this is going to get me in trouble with some people, but that's okay, because God told me to be truthful and tell the truth. So anyway, so I'm just going to say that Moses is the one in the Old Testament that said, if you're if you're a medium, that God is going to turn his face from you. And I usually know these scriptures like by heart, but anyway, And all the things about don't be associated with those who have familiar spirits, and all of those things. Those were taught by Moses. And yes, a lot of that stuff, there's people who practice voodoo stuff, and they call up the dead to do their bidding because they put a curse on somebody. And back in that day, they were pagans and they worshipped all kinds of different gods, and they called up the dead to the lost people that were walking on the earth. They call them up to help them do curses and all of those things. So you have to realize what was going on at the time. But if a saint of God or an angel of God comes through to this world to tell you something, it's usually a correction, something you're doing wrong that needs to be corrected. And in the Old Testament, it says they told the seers to stop seeing and the visionaries to stop having dreams because they didn't want to hear the reproach of God. So what I call myself is a seer, because I've looked it up, and it's the same thing. I'm a seer. I have never been away from God in my life. I've gotten off track a few times, of course, but I'm saved. I've been saved since I was little, and I don't worship Satan in any way. And Jesus was accused of doing the things he did through Beelzebub because they're the same gift, like I said. So it's who you serve with your gift. Anyway, oh, my friend that contacted me. I wasn't going to mention your name. I don't mention names on here, but thank you for being a part of that. God was correcting me. Well, not correcting me, but guiding me in a different direction. So I can do all those things, y'all, but it's just that I want to serve the Lord with the things I do. So I just want to be clear about all of that. Anyway, and everybody has their own beliefs and opinions, but I'm just saying, just think about this. Moses and Elijah came through to speak to Jesus, the Son of God, who already knew, right? He already knew, but God allowed Moses and Elijah to come through and speak to him, to guide him, and to counsel him. It said he had ministering spirits. This means more than just one, y'all. And I'm sure that he had a lot of things like that he didn't disclose, because even when he had that encounter with Moses and Elijah, he told the disciples not to tell, but what they do, first thing they went and told. So anyway, I only shared that part of me with y'all because of the fact that I've had people ask me many times, and I'm going to tell y'all a story about that today. I decided to do readings, and as I said, I don't know why I have this ability, and it's not evil. I know evil. I have stood up against demons and bad people in the spiritual realm and everything else. So, and I don't have any problem with recognizing who they are. Everybody's like, oh, that's just a demon trying to fool you. Hey, I know that happens, but no. God gave me the ability to discern spirits. And so there's just people like me. And so, I'm just hoping some of them will stop feeling unincluded in the churches, like they don't belong, when in fact God would like to use their abilities to correct and instruct and guide people. And that's the Holy Spirit, y'all, because who does the Holy Spirit use here on the earth? He uses people. Who does the Holy Spirit use? Which is God's Spirit and Jesus' Spirit come together in one accord. Who uses who does God use in the heavenly realms? He uses the little lords. Heaven is a kingdom made of little lords and little kings, and Jesus is Lord of Lords, big Lord, and big K, big King of them all. So they have assignments in heaven. He talked to the apostles about this, about what the assignments are in heaven, and it's not like you go sit on a fluffy cloud and play your violin for the rest of your life. That's not how it is. You're still in service until the new world is established, when God comes back down to the earth. Anyway, and there's still going to be kingdoms, lords over people is what it is. There are little lords guiding the people, and that's just our family members, the saints of God, when the saints go marching in. And all of us here are the saints on the earth. So I'm sorry to preach or to give my version of my belief today, but I had to because of this thing that happened, because of getting instructed yesterday. I had to tell that part of my story. But now on to the ghost story. Are y'all ready? So this is a sort of an example of what I'm talking about that normally happens between me and people. I can meet someone and suddenly I know so much about them, and it's not because I know, it's because I'm being told, and not by an evil demon either, because everything that comes to me is always something to heal, to correct, and so that's called being a seer or a visionary. So we need to understand that we still exist, and many of us exist. And you know what? We're supposed to be praying for that gift according to the Bible, the gift of prophecy, the gift of being able to discern spirits and to give messages. So, okay, I'm going to quit preaching now. I'm sorry. I hope I don't lose all my people who are atheists and everything, because the main reason I do this is so that people who have no faith will come to know God. And I'm not trying to be a manipulative or deceitful, but I'm just trying to show, the power of God instead of the power of the devil all the time. Everybody wants to worship the devil around here by saying how powerful he is. And some people don't even believe in that. So, and if nothing else, just think of it as good stories. Anyway, today's story is going to be called The Shrimp Boat. And basically what happened is y'all, I forgot. I'm old and I'm forgetful, so just forgive me. But I have to go back to the original reason this all started in my life. And, it started when I was a little kid, but as far as focused and purpose and all of that, it started in a beauty salon that I had. Other than that, it was just random, but then it's like I got into a focused mission. So, it was scary. I didn't understand. And anyway, many of y'all have already read my book, or you were with me at the time that I had these experiences in my beauty salon. I had a beauty salon that was haunted, and yes, I did all the things. I rebuked it. I prayed the blood of Jesus over it. I put prayers at every door. I sat in that shop and read my Bible, 3 hours a day. All the preachers came too, and so, we did all the things. And I still had to deal with that spirit for 2 years. And anyway, that's what that book is about, Surrounded by Spirits. Well, I wasn't ever going to tell it on a program because, it's my book. I was trying to sell my book because I want everybody to have it in their hands so they can have her story. But I was contacted and I did share it on a podcast with another person. And I don't want to mention them unless they want me to, so if they can contact me and tell me if they want me to mention their name on my podcast. But anyway, but I haven't done the story on here. So I'm just warning some of y'all that I'm going to start next week. I'm going to go back and tell the story of what happened in the hair salon. And I'm only saying that so that if you already know that story and you don't want to listen, then you'll know that it'll probably take me a couple of weeks to tell that story, and then I'll get back to my little stories. So anyway, there's that. So today I'm going to tell the story, The Shrimp Boat, and basically it's kind of an in the middle story. I had left the salon that was haunted, and I had rented a little space inside of a very luxurious hair salon, and I had already been, let me think just a minute. Okay, what had happened is I had already been to, my friend's hair salon where I met the biker chick and everything, and all of that had happened. And then I had owned another salon which had a, partial ghost sighting in it. That's really I had another experience over there I'll have to tell y'all about. I'm not going to tell it today, but I'll come back to that experience maybe later. Anyway, I keep forgetting some of the experiences that I had. And then I got sick. I had to close my shop, and I moved to a very small little room in a luxurious hair salon. And this is where that happened. So I was new at this new shop, and I was in there working on people's hair, and I was really sick at that time. I had that tumor, between my brain and my spine. Maybe that's what makes me crazy. Y'all, it's not. I was crazy long before that. Anyway, I was in there doing hair, and this lady came in, and she worked next door to me in a different space. We all had our private spaces. Anyway, she came over to my room, and she asked me if she could borrow some product because she was out of product. I'm trying to see y'all's comments. Anyway, and I told her that would be fine. But while she was standing there talking to me, a man came, not a real man, a ghostly man, a saint of God came through the door into the room. And he was a real big, tall man. He had on Western clothes and a cowboy hat. And he told me that she was being mean to her sister-in-law, and that he wanted me to tell her that everything about that was her fault and that she better apologize to her sister-in-law. And I just stood there and was looking at the lady going, I don't even know her. I cannot tell her this, but I understand that these are messages from heaven and that they are given to us to help us heal and to correct a situation. So I waited. I always have to wait for the right opportunity after this kind of thing happens. Well, she got the product and went back into her room, and so I finished doing what I was doing, and then I just casually walked over to her room, and I was looking at her necklaces and everything while she was working on a customer's hair, and I don't remember what they were talking about, but anyway, there was a lull in the conversation, and I said, hey, when you have a chance, I need to talk to you if you don't mind. And she goes, oh, it's fine, go ahead, talk to me now. And I said, oh no, it's something private. So when you don't have a customer or something in between customers, I wanted to tell you something. And she said, well, no, go ahead, this is my friend, she doesn't care, I tell her everything anyway. I said, okay. I said, well, are you having trouble with someone in your family? And she goes, yes, my sister-in-law. Why? I said, well, because I said, I know you don't know anything about me, and I hate to tell you this because I don't like to out myself, really. I said, but I have this man coming through, and he is a tall man. He's a really big guy. He looks like a cowboy, has on Western clothes and a cowboy hat. And she goes, oh my gosh, that's my dad. She goes, what is he saying, or what, something like that. And I said, well, he told me that. I said, you're not going to like this. She said, that's okay. Tell me anyway. I said, okay. He said that it's your fault and that he wants you to apologize to her. And she just started crying. Oh, he said that he said, she is like a sister to you, and this is your fault, and you need to apologize to her. Well, she just started crying because you can try to condemn somebody all day long and tell them how wrong they are, but when the truth convicts them of what they're doing, it's a whole new thing. Well, she just started crying, and she said, I know it is. And she just couldn't admit it because of her pride that it had been her fault. So she stopped right then and there and went and got on the phone and called her sister-in-law and told her that it was her fault. Well, while she was doing that, another lady came into the room and sat down, and she had been kind of listening from the hallway or something, and she came in and sat down, and she was an Asian lady, I guess, I don't know. Anyway, she was from either Japan, I think, or Korea, I don't know. Anyway, she came in and she sat down and she was listening to what was going on, and she was not buying it, and I was trying to keep her from knowing what was going on. And the other lady just plain told her, she just told me that I'm the one that was at fault, and I called my sister-in-law, now she's going to come up here, and all of those things. And the other lady was very sarcastic. I've had this happen to me several times, y'all, where somebody's just really sarcastic and they don't believe that I have the ability that I do. The ability's not of myself. I couldn't do this in a million years if I wanted to. It's just something that God created in me. I think it's in all of us, but I'm going to leave it there. I just think it's how the more close to heaven, the more you draw to the Lord, the more you see things. Things are opened up and revealed to you. Anyway, she said, oh, it's the same thing as what happened at that other shop. It was like, well, then do you see anybody around me? If you can see spirits, do you see anybody around me? And when she said that, I'm telling you the truth, 4 people walked in the door. Of course, they're spirit people, y'all. 4 people walked in the door, and I said, actually, I see 4 people. And she just fell to the floor. I hadn't even said who they were yet. She fell to the floor and was crying. And I said, it's okay, And I kind of held her on the floor for a minute, and then I helped her get up and sit on the chair, and she was just crying so hard. I said, well, it's your dad and your mom and your 2 brothers. She said, I know. And I said, I'm seeing a ship. And I said, I'm out on the ocean. I'm seeing the ship. I'm on the ship, and someone falls off of the ship on the other end. It's one of the boys, and I'm the father. And I run to try to save them. I jump in, and I'm unable to save them. And then I drown. And then I see the other son jump off of the boat to try to help, and he also drowns. So all 3 of them drowned there that day. And she said, what happened to my brother? She said, that was my dad's shrimp boat. And she said, but what happened to my brother? They weren't able to find my brother. And I think this was a test from her to me to see if I really was seeing these things. And I said, well, I'm up under a large tower. It's like I washed up under the tower. And she said, that's exactly right. She said, they only found my dad and my brother at first, and then about 2 weeks later they found my brother washed up under a dock or something. His body had washed up under a dock. I said, but the other brother, I said, I'm feeling cancer, from somebody. And she said, well, that was my mother. My mother got cancer. And I said, and I feel that this other brother died much later, and he was a very depressed person. And she said he killed himself because he couldn't live with the deaths of my family members. So that little lady, when this was all said and done, she had been told about Jesus before, and she didn't really believe all of it, but she became a Christian after that. And she asked me to start talking to her friends because she had other people, and I was fixing to move. So I had just a few months before I was moving from Texas to Oregon. And so she had several people that she wanted me to talk to, and I was able to give them messages as well. And it saved a 16-year-old's life, because his mother brought him. She and him came to the little lady had a nail salon, and she asked me to come to her nail salon to speak to her family members. They were all Korean, and each one had some sort of a different family member they had lost. Anyway, one of the little 16-year-old boys had planned to kill himself, and because I was able to give him a message, he did not do it. And that's 3 people, y'all, that told me later that they had plans to kill themselves. One was after a funeral that I got my ministry license just to be able to do funerals and weddings several years ago, and 3 weeks after I got my ministry license, ordination, one of my best friends that I'd had for many years, that was my best friend, my daughter's best friend, was killed. She was 34, and I was able to do her services. There was over 450 people there, and the lady that was her mother had planned to not be here anymore after the funeral services, but because of the messages I was able to give her, she did not do that, and she's still doing very well. And she, as well as you can after you lose a daughter, a child. And then another friend, that I have another story. Actually, it's a poem that I got called The Ship. Isn't that weird? The shrimp boat. And then this other poem is called The Ship. I'll do that another time. But that person also told me that if I hadn't gave them the message when I did, they had in their bathroom and were fixing to go home and take all of the pills to kill themselves. So there's reasons for these things, and I'm not going to have to take up for it either. God told me I don't have to take up for him. And I don't have to take up for myself. You know, you can believe or not believe. To me, it's the substance of things hoped for and the evidence of things unseen. You know, we hope that all that's true, that heaven stuff, right? This is just little evidences that it is. So anyway, I don't know why that seemed so hard today. Anyway, I'm going to tell y'all a healing story now because we have time. I didn't take that long on that story. That was just one that just kind of explains to you the kinds of things that happened to me. And it's happened to me even since I've lived here. I just don't publicize it or anything. But I wanted to tell y'all the story about my grandmother. My grandmother is like, she was Pentecostal, y'all. I mean, she got on to me for cutting my hair and wearing makeup. She was, if you want to talk about religious, that woman, she knew every scripture and she could tell you 5 for every single thing that was going on. And bless her heart, and I loved her. I admired her. I wanted to be like her when I grew up, you know. But anyway, what happened was, I was going through that thing. We're off of the shrimp boat story now. Isn't that wonderful? But anyway, we're off of that story. And we're going to go to grandmother. And basically what happened is, you know, this was during that process when I had been taken up to heaven. That was on my last story, I believe, where I had been taken up to heaven. I'm not going to look at messages now, y'all. Anyway, this was before that healing, before that complete healing took place. Well, I was in my room one night and I was really tired, and I went to sleep bed early, and I was sound asleep. Well, I had a doctor's appointment the next day to go see one of my neurologists. And anyway, usually when I had a doctor's appointment, I would get my clothes all ready, and I had this metal hanger that, you know, those wreath hangers that you hang on the door to hold wreaths. Well, I had one on my bedroom door to hold my clothes that I was going to wear the next day. So I hung my clothes up there. I laid down, went to sleep, and it was the middle of the night. I don't even know what time. I had metal hangers, and so I heard the metal hangers like breaking against the metal wreath hanger. Sorry, y'all. And I get so distracted. And anyway, I heard that, and it startled me. You know, I woke up and I'm like, what is going on? And in that particular room, it was quite dark and I couldn't see anything, but I could just hear movement. And then I heard the clothes just pick up off of the wreath hanger and fall to the floor. And, you know, there was not anyone in the room with me. And I was like, what is going on? And then I hear my grandmother's voice, and she says, honey, this is grandmother. I just wanted to let you know that you have a little tumor right up under your jaw. And she said, and that's the reason you're having all that pain in your jaw. And she said, she said the doctors have missed it, but that little girl, that little Asian girl, Indian girl, that little Indian girl saw it or took a picture of it when she was taking your thyroid scan the other day. She said, now, not that first little girl, because I had 2 scans the week before on my thyroid. And she said, no, not that first little girl, but that Indian girl. So I knew that it was the second test she was talking about. They did the first test. I guess it was inconclusive, and so they ordered a second test. And it was correct. When she says Indian, she means from India. A girl from India had done my scan, and she said that when she was doing that scan, she had caught a picture of the tumor that was under my jawline. And I had had pain in my face for so many months. I had been begging the doctors to do something about the pain in my face. I told them I was getting my teeth pulled because my teeth hurt so bad. And they were like, no, you'll make things worse. Don't get your teeth pulled, you know. And I had an appointment. I had an appointment with the neurologist that morning at 10, and I had an appointment with an oral surgeon to pull my tooth. I told you have to, I had argued with them for 2 or 3 months. I said, you have to at least pull that back tooth because it hurts so bad. I could not take it. I was wearing thermalgesic patches on my face, and I was on tons of prescriptions for pain medicine and everything else. So I said, you have to at least, it's my teeth. I want you to pull that back tooth. You have to do it. So I finally convinced this oral surgeon, and they had done panoramic x-rays and every test they could do on me and couldn't find nothing wrong with me. Kept telling me that there was nothing there. They didn't know why I had so much pain. And so, I mean, they knew about the tumor, you know, between my brain and my spine, and it was on all the nerves, but they didn't know why I was having this pain in my jaw. Well, she said that this had been captured, and so she said, so before you go to your doctor's appointment in the morning, just go by the hospital in the medical records and ask them to give you a copy of that film. And I said, I was like, will they do that? I did not know that they would do that. And that's all she said. And then she was gone. And so I got up and I went in the bathroom and I started looking and feeling, and sure enough, right there, I had a little knot, you know, kind of like when you have a lymph gland that's swollen, because I guess it may have been a lymph gland. I don't know. But I had a little knot right under here, and it was sore to the touch and everything. And I thought, well, that, you know, must be a lymph gland or something. So it's true. I did have a little knot right there. So when I was going to the neurologist's appointment the next day, I went by the hospital because it was right there on the same street. And I went to medical records thinking they wouldn't give me this copy of this scan, you know. And I said, is it possible for me to get a copy of the scan that they did on me this week? She said, sure, which one do you want? And I said, I want the second one that was done. And she said, okay. So she got me a copy of the scan. It was on a little CD thing, you know. And I went over to my doctor's office, and he was just talking to me as he regularly does. I waited for him to complete what he was going to do. And then I said, you know what? I said, I talked to my grandmother, and she said that I said, you know, she was a nurse the whole time she was living. And I said, she said that she thinks I have a little tumor right here that may have been missed because there's a little knot there. And I said, she thinks maybe when they did this scan on my thyroid, maybe they got a picture of it. And I said, so I went and got the film for you to look at if you don't mind. And he said, oh, no, not at all. Just give it here. And he had the little computer right there in the office, and he stuck it in. And I mean, the minute it came up, you could see it as big as day. He said, oh, yeah, there is something there. We'll have to get that biopsied for you. And so that was that. And I said, well, you know, I forgot to tell you, actually, I didn't tell you on purpose, that my grandmother's been passed away for several years now. And he said, oh, that's nothing new to me. He said, we see that kind of thing all the time. He said, that's not surprising. He said, well, I'm glad that she was able to help you. I couldn't believe it. You can't believe the things you'll tell people, and they're like, oh, we've had these experiences. They just don't discuss it because it's too upsetting to, you know, normal people. But anyway, so, but grandmother did not tell me that I couldn't get my tooth pulled. And the doctor, however, told me, I don't want you to get your tooth pulled. You're going to make things worse. And I just, in my heart, knew that he was wrong. And so I went and got my tooth pulled at 1 o'clock. And so I got my tooth pulled, went home. Not the next day, but the day after that, suddenly, every time that I talked or anything, my tongue would just get all kinds of lacerations in it. And my mouth was bleeding and all of that. And I called the surgeon, and he said, oh, come back in here. Well, it turned out that I had osteomyelitis all in that jawbone, an infection that had been there so long it had killed my jawbone. And I had been complaining the whole time to 2 neurologists, an ENT, and an oral surgeon. And only after my grandmother told me about the tumor had cut off the blood flow into the the tissues there, what have you, and it had killed the jawbone. So I had to have a surgery where they split the jawbone in half. They had to pull all of those teeth there, like 4 teeth, split the jawbone in half and take half of the bone out. Thank goodness it was on the inside. But anyway, and I had to be on IV antibiotics and everything to get that infection cleared up. So if my grandmother hadn't come and told me, I don't know if I would have ever known. I probably would have died from that infection in my jawbone. I don't know. So that's another one of my miraculous stories, y'all. And I always thank God for allowing his saints to come through with messages to help us in any way that they can. So that's the end of my story. And I see there's a lot of comments on here. And what I'm going to do, some people say that they've tried to send me requests, but it's not going through. I don't know why that would happen, y'all. You can message me on Messenger, and I should be able to get your message on Messenger. I do need some of y'all to be ready to tell your stories in a couple of weeks, because I'm going to run out of stories. I've already told several. I had one young lady contact me, but I don't know. You don't have to show yourself on here or anything. You can just either tell me the story and I'll tell it, or you can join on the live video with me and tell it. It's going to be up to you. So we're just going to keep doing this and figure out how we want to do it as we go along. But I'm sure that some of y'all have a miraculous story that you can tell about an angel visit or a grandma visit or something like that, or something scary that happened to you when you were sleeping. And, now that could be demonic. Remember, we got to learn to discern the spirits. Anyway, that's about it for today, y'all. And I'm going to read back through the messages, and I'll answer anything. And I thank you, Miss Jackie, for being the one to help me through my correction. Well, my direction. It wasn't a correction. It was a direction. Because like I said, just like Jesus, and why can I do these things? Because guess what? Jesus lives inside of me. And he said, all the things I can do, you can do more. Why? Because I live inside of you. That's why. So anyway, there's a lot to the spiritual that we just don't accept anymore. We don't practice. So anyway, that's the end of my story for today. I'm fixing to go, if I can, paint the window in downtown at the city hall for the next event they're having. And I have to run over to Abilene and get my prints so that I can have my paint party Thursday. I hope to do online paint parties someday. And maybe some of y'all can join me in that. Anyway, that's it. And I thank y'all for watching. And I guess I'll talk to you later. Just leave me more messages if you see this on a replay or anything. And I'm sorry for preaching. Y'all, I used to be a YouTube preacher. And I got scared. I was younger. And I didn't think women were supposed to preach. But I felt the call. So I went on there and I was doing little sermons, little messages. I'm just going to call them messages because to me that's what it is. And I got attacked by these foreign men who didn't think that women should be teaching and gave me a hard time. And I was scared of them because that was the time when all this stuff was going on in the world. I hate to even mention what it was, but I got scared of them, and so I quit. One of these days, I may start doing it again so I won't have to preach to y'all when I'm telling ghost stories. Anyway, thanks, y'all, and I'll talk to you next Tuesday at 10 o'clock. Bye.